Okay. I guess I'll wait for this one person to get connected. Okay, well, I guess, okay. Welcome everyone. I think everyone's online. So, yeah, welcome to SSU's Social Justice Week's presenting Juan Mesa, or Los Mesa. Yeah, okay. My name is Victoria. I am a student. I am a senior at SSU. I am a anthro major, and I will be your host this evening. And our Zoom facilitator, so our technical person today is Daniela Caballero. If you have any questions on how to deal with the Zoom interface, you can ask her in the chat. I guess right now I'll just go over the ground rules real quick, and then Danielle will put them in the chat. So if anyone has any questions on how to use the Zoom interface, you can use the chat function to send it a direct message to our facilitator. Microphones should remain muted unless asked to unmute by the host or facilitator. If you would like to speak, you can use the raise hand function or ask it in the chat. Please be mindful of background noise when your microphone is on. Cameras can be kept off if you want, or kept on if you want, doesn't matter. Just please keep background distractions to a minimum, and if needed, please turn off your camera. Any inappropriate displays or gestures through the camera will result in an instant removal from the session. Our behavioral expectations are just be courteous to others and avoid inflammatory language, speak from your own perspective, criticize ideas, not individuals. We will not tolerate any derogatory or hateful language or actions, avoid speaking over each other, and respect other people's contributions. Failure to follow any of the ground rules will result first in a warning, and if violations persist, you may be ejected from the Zoom meeting. I guess I'm with that. And I will introduce our esteemed guest, Juan or Los Mesa. Juan Mesa is an ex-incarcerated human being released after 24 years and 7 months, who went to prison at 19 and came out at 44. Juan is active in the arts and restorative justice, currently working in acting with compassion and truth with the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office to lead a pilot diversion program for hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community. Juan is also a stage performer, choreographer, and director, focusing on drama therapy so that people can begin to heal from their trauma through self-expression. They have been active in using arts to confront racism, social injustice, and mass incarceration while under the gun. He also has a couple links to follow, and I'll put them in the chat. And a lot of people have joined since I started talking. But I guess for now, I will turn it over to our esteemed guest.
Thank you, Victoria.
No.
So as you heard, I was incarcerated at 19 years old. And so kind of what I'm going to speak on today is what that means. So being incarcerated at 19 years old, when I went into prison, I didn't have a life built. I didn't have a whole lot of things. I was still a teenager. I didn't think about future. I didn't have anything really set up. So in 2000, by the way, my sentence was 82 years. So I ended up getting out through youth offender. And youth offender board is a board specifically set for people between the ages of up to the age of 26. If a person is convicted of a crime, they are allowed to go to the parole board. If you have a determinate sentence, which is anything without a life at the end of it, you go to board after 15 years of incarceration. If you have a 15 to life, you do 20 years, and then you have a chance to go before the parole board. And if a person has 25 to life, they do 25 years, and then they get a youth offender hearing. And so we all kind of fought for the youth offender hearing because the data says that the brain isn't developed until you're 26 in most youth. That's why there's so many horrible decisions, bad decisions, stupid decisions, however a person wants to say, when you're in that age, because you're still learning. Your executive function hasn't quite coalesced at that time. So being a youth offender, I was able to go to parole after doing 24 years. This law was retroactive. That's why I did so much time. I didn't have a life sentence, so I should have went at 15 years, but they had um, ways to do it to where they had to they had to first do the people that were 18, 18, 18 to 19, 19 to 20, and it just took time. And then they were also doing the people with the life sentences. So with that being said, they have a youth offender parole hearing, but they don't have youth offender paroles. And what I mean by that is I get out and I am now in an adult world with adult parole, which means it looks different for me. It looks different for me in the sense that I don't, since I've been incarcerated, I've dealt with the issues that I've dealt with, and I've grown up. I was stuck in arrested development all through incarceration pretty much. I never really went past the ages of 19 and 20 as far as the world out here. And then also, um, when a person is arrested at 30, 40 years old, their life is just different. They come out to a family, they come out to, a trade, all these different things. When you're a young person in prison, if you don't have a trade, you just don't have a trade, and they're almost impossible to come to. And what that means is that if what youth offender parole looks like, I would say it would be a shorter time. It would be maybe a year instead of 3, 5, or indefinitely, because they still have paroles according to adults, but they don't have it according to youth. And I would say in being a youth offender, a lot of us never developed a strong bond with our families. And so when we get out, we get put in transitional houses, and that still doesn't create the bond with our families. I think we should be able to go home more readily, being if we have those available to us. Also, they have certain registrations for different people. They have gang, they have 290, all these different registrations that a person has to go through. But if they recognize that a person is a youth and deserves a second chance in prison, and then that person gets out and they have to register in some other respect, do they actually recognize that the youth gets a second chance? They understand that the brain doesn't develop or that rapidly, and yet they're being held to a standard of. And most of the people I grew up with in prison, and I say grow up because there was about 20,000 of us that all went to prison at the same time in the 90s. And we were all between the ages of 17 and 22 years old. And we grew up together. We helped each other. We kept each other safe and stuff. And now we're getting out into a world that, number one, we don't really know how to navigate. We don't understand how to pay bills because a lot of us didn't do that. We don't understand how, just a lot of things in that respect. And so, being that we were at such a young age, why does a registry have to be for life? Why can't it be for a certain amount of time? Most of us committed one crime and went to prison for the rest of our lives. We didn't commit crime after crime after crime. We weren't we were living criminal lives. Don't get me wrong there, but we were living criminal lives as children and young people. We weren't living them as sophisticated adults, terrorizing or preying on our community. We were actually quite the opposite. We felt the community was preying on us and we didn't belong. A lot of us, we all come from traumatic backgrounds, a lot of abuse and stuff. And that's why we went the road we did. We went down this violent path is because it's what we grew up in, and nobody quite took us out. And I don't know what youth of parole would look like, but I know what it shouldn't look like. And it shouldn't look like adult parole. It shouldn't look like a constant registration. It shouldn't look as binding, and also it should take into account what we did while we were in prison in order to get out. And what I mean is I've been an activist for the last 15 years, as far as drama therapy, as far as, getting to the trauma of our lives, helping out people next to me. But none of that's taken into account. I can never make an amend and begin alive. But I would say if they recognize, because they recognized that I was a young person that didn't have the social skills or the developed brain to go to prison, then how come they don't recognize that when I come out of prison? How come that isn't part of the conversation? So I think that the youth offender parole hearing should be expanded to a youth offender parole regulations. And I would say those regulations would entail a shorter time on parole, a larger radius to travel, because some of us haven't seen our family in 24 years. We have cousins and stuff that live in other states who we love and we grew up with, but we're unable to go there because of a 50-mile radius on parole. It should be even registrations, whatever they may be, they should be according to a crime and a specific thing instead of a general statement or a general blanket covering as they do. They treat everybody as the worst case scenario. I mean, what's the difference between, one of the people we read about that are glorified as far as like mass murderers or serial killers that we read about, and a young person who gets into a shootout with somebody else and kills somebody and hasn't really thought about anything other than survival? There's a difference there. This person isn't going out to prey on somebody. This person is going out to survive. Or a young person who is so afraid to lose friends because he has nobody will do anything for his friends and even hurt other people. But when he gets older, he thinks about it, but yet that one instance will be a stain on his life forever, or her life even, just their life is forever stuck at 19 years old, 18 years old, 20 years old, 22. I mean, imagine your life like that your most embarrassing, shameful act that you ever did is always going to go before you from your teenage years. And I have to look at that every day, and then I have to explain it all the time to a committee or something. I'm unable to move past it, not because I want to, because I still remember my victim. I still remember these things. These are things that I think about, how I hurt somebody, but I can't move past a certain stage of it because it's always being held. My past won't allow me to be in the present so I can make a future. And so that's what I would, have you guys come up with is what would youth offender parole look like? And how can it be most effective to bringing us in to a society that we know nothing about and we feel sometimes is hostile towards us? Thank you.
Okay, so did you want to go into breakout groups to discuss this?
Is that a yes?
Okay, and okay, so I guess right now we should go into breakout groups and we'll discuss Juan's prompt. So what would group youth parole look like, or what we should? So here, let's set up the breakout rooms.
Prompt is what would youth parole look like? What should youth parole look like?
What should youth parole look like after a person is gone before the board and come out? What should some of the regulations be, or as opposed to adult paroles?
Can I just ask what I might have missed a little bit? I was having trouble getting online. What programs do they provide prior to that that potential of for the youth programs while still in jail?
So while in prison, 85% of the programs don't, or 85% of the prisons don't give programs. We have to correspond. We have to create them ourselves. There may be, I'll say, out of the 36 prisons that are in California, there may be 5 that actually have a program or a programming yard where you can, where these things are more readily available. But for the most part, the state doesn't provide rehabilitation in a real sense.
Crazy.
And can I just say something? It's really on my heart. I'm sorry I was late in. I was in a service commitment. Juan, I just want to thank you and honor you for sharing with us so honestly and transparently. These are profound truths that you're bringing to us. And I just wanted to show gratitude to you before we move on into our next stage.
Thank you.
I work with your brothers and sisters sometimes, and just you're in my heart, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we created the breakout rooms and you guys should have received an invitation to join them.
Can you remind us how long we're going to be in breakout rooms?
15 minutes.
Great. So I'll say at 7:34, I'll send a message to come back.
Okay.
Wow, I overheard some really amazing conversations, and I'm sorry there were lots cut short. Wow. Thank you, everybody, for being so vulnerable and sharing so much.
Is everyone back? Yes, I assume. I don't think we have any breakout rooms. So now think, should we run the conversation to everyone, see what everyone discussed? Yes, okay. Los, did you want to say anything? I don't think you even reached our group, so.
I just want people to, like, how many people understand what it means to go to the parole board? Number one. All right. Because that's part of it. And I just want to say this, and I was just saying this in the last breakout room. When I go before the parole board, I've done all the work. I've proven my sobriety. I've proven so many different things. And then when I get on parole, I'm right back at square one as far as having to prove myself again. Like I say, I don't do drugs, and yet I'm going to have to do drug treatment. And they've known my sobriety's been there for over 20 years. They know because I live in a fishbowl. They see everything I do. So it's not like they don't know, but yet these are the types of things that I think about. Thank you. That's all.
Juan, if I could ask you, I understand you go before the parole board coming out of prison, but do they revisit? Does the parole board revisit your actions once you have been released, or and do they then take into account what you did up to that point?
So they have the ability to do that, but they have so many parole hearings coming up and so many things going on that they'd rather just let paroles deal with that. Unless, of course, somebody has like a political, like somebody in their corner, or they're doing a certain work in a certain place in order for my name to come across the board. They more likely will just be like, well, we'll let you handle that. Now, after 2 years to 3 years, 2 years, they have to review, right? Well, I don't know what that review looks like. It could be just like, okay, you haven't done anything extraordinary, we're going to keep you on. Because most people that come off early have done extraordinary things. They haven't just, done mundane things like live a life or just have a job and take care of their family. They've done really good community service. And I think that, just actually not getting in trouble like should be enough for a person to come off after 2 years. I mean, it's usually the parole is what makes us give up and say, I guess nobody wants me to stay out because everything's stacked against me. That's how it feels. But yes, to answer your questions, they can review, but it's more likely they if they don't have to, they're not going to give you a favorable review.
So I just read that that they do offer like regular schooling while you are in the system. Is that correct for like up to high school? Do they have programs where they encourage you at all? Is it even possible to prepare you for going to college once you come out?
So if you ever been to San Quentin, you realize it is possible. It's all about volunteers. San Quentin had, I think, 5,000 volunteers come through in 1 year. And in that, you have an Associate of Arts degree happening there. You have bachelors. You have people getting their GED because the state doesn't funnel the money into those places. Now, if I'm in, say, High Desert or New Folsom, I'm going to more likely be stuck in my cell 24 hours a day, except for maybe on Wednesday when I get showers for 15 minutes. You know, I once did the math, and in 1 year, I was out of my cell for 126 hours. You know, so I would say on paper, it's always available. In actual action, it's hard to get. It's just hard to do. I mean, yeah, I can get my GED, but I have to be able to make it to class. And if the prison's locked down, I'm not getting to class. And if I, you know, GED has to be proctored. It can't be something you can do and mail it in. So if that's unavailable, I can't do it. So, and if you look at, I guarantee if you look at most of the prisons, most of them are locked down right now with COVID. So how many people are actually going to education? Not very many people. College courses depends on the prison you're at. Some they encourage it, some they discourage it. They throw your books away. They come search your cell. They use it as punitive. You know, if you don't do what I do, say I'm going to go in your cell and I'm not going to allow you to educate yourself. So it's available, of course. I got my GED in prison, and it took me. They put me in AB. They put me in English as a second language in prison. English is my first language, along with Spanish. I have two going, but the point is, they just looked at my name and they said, "Okay, we're going to put you in English as a second language." I had to fight to get out of that. I had to actually appeal to get out of it. I couldn't just go to the teacher and say, "Hey, I know English." It doesn't work that way. So, and then also once I got out of there, I was put in AB1. I have a 12. When I went to prison, I have a 12.9 education scale, however they measure it. And yet I had to go to the lowest level of education because they get paid for every step. So once I made it out of there, they got paid as I went to the next one, they got paid as I went to the next one. They got paid. Every time they would put me up, the teacher got paid because they moved me on, not because I was able to. So education is kind of a tricky subject in prison because by law they have to do it, but how it's done should really be looked at. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And okay. Lana says, thank you. That was very interesting to hear about. Yeah, that actually made me think about how there seems to be a parallel between youth and incarcerated youth and like out youth in a way. Like it seems that we're all missing something to prepare for our future, and it's very easy to forget about people who are missing more. So incarcerated youth are, so I didn't even know that education in prisons were funded by volunteers or worked by volunteers.
If I may say, in San Quentin, most
San
of the
Quentin?
education that has gone to in other prisons, they don't allow volunteers
Mm-hmm.
to go in. So
That's
San
rough.
Quentin is a unique prison, and
Uh-huh.
they do run all the education, like as far as GED and getting people into college and stuff. That is all volunteer. There's no state money in those particular programs in that
Mm-hmm.
prison.
Mm-hmm. Is that something we could also advocate for? Education in prisons, or funding education in prisons?
I would say if you advocate for anything, is making volunteership in prisons easier,
Mm-hmm.
and especially for people of color, because I can go into prison and there'll be 500 white ladies that are going to volunteer in prison that know nothing about my experience to be able to pull me in. And yet if they're brown, black, Asian, it's they got to jump through hoops and do everything accordingly. So I would say for the most part, if you want to change prison, take volunteers and put them in those prisons. Because one thing about San Quentin is when I got there, it scared the shit out of me. because there were so many free people walking around. Understand this, when I'm at another prison, I cannot go up and talk to somebody who is not a CO or in blue.
Mm-hmm.
I will get put on the ground. I will be put on a wall for just saying hello, or for saying, "Hey, how you doing today?"
Mm-hmm.
That creates antisocial or non-social behavior.
Mm-hmm.
When I get to San Quentin, I got all these people, volunteers walking on the yard, and I got my head down. And I'm walking straight because I'm afraid
Mm-hmm.
for my safety, that if I say anything and I see everybody else talking, and that's freaking me out, like, stop, you guys, they're going to get this yard shut down. Everybody's like, no, man, that's how it goes here. And that's how society is. But we again, it comes back to the system, this retributive system that we live up under, does not want us to walk in our humanity while we're being taken out of society. And I think that's what needs to change, is society, and people need to get into the prisons and break down the doors to volunteer in there. And so what I'm about to say, me and a friend discussed it because it sounds like a threat, but it's not a threat, it's just a thought. And we think like a lot of people are getting out of prison right now because it's overcrowded. I want to be healed to go into my community. And I would hope that my community would want healed people coming out. But it doesn't happen with a wall between us. It happens without a wall between us. So if volunteers are going in and putting in their time, trust me, when I get out, I'm going to treat the people who came in, which is the society outside, with more respect and honor, because I believe they want me there.
Can I just ask you, what is it that the volunteers do while they're there? Is it like they have a list of things they're allowed to do in interacting? And when you say that that there's only a specific set of individuals who come in, are you saying that they make the paperwork more difficult, or they don't reach out to other members of the community in order to broaden that base of who comes in to volunteer?
So what it is most people of color that will come into prison, there's always a question of, do you have a family member in prison? Have you ever associated with this? There's these different stopgaps, these beautiful things in paperwork, like we're just doing a background check. But they know in this background check that certain things may come up. And it's the community that's being affected that wants to get in there and help, that's being held out because they have loved ones in prison. And they know that this is the way to go. And it's just like it's like the box. Everybody's welcome to apply for the job, but yet once I'm marked that I'm on parole or I've been convicted, the job stops there. That's why the box had to be taken out. And I believe volunteerism should be according to, forget a person if they have anybody incarcerated. Who are they and what are they going there for should be the only question asked. But there's a whole lot of paperwork. There's all kinds of background done on a person going in. And I've been told by many a person of color that's gone in that whereas this person walked right through the door, the other person was accosted, or their paperwork was lost, or there was more that they had to fill out. On many fronts, I've heard this from different volunteers trying to come in. And so what it is there's a systematic whitening in the system. And what I mean by that is we've come to understand in prison that there is the belief that the white girl saves. That from the earliest days, when I think it was World War I, when the white girls could go out and they would give food to the poor and all of this, there was an image that was set there. And in that image, it's still producing that that idea today that there's this standard, and if a person doesn't meet this white standard, as far as like the white woman, female savior, then that's not going to happen. And we've watched it happen on many different fronts. And I mean, it's something that's very real that we see on the inside, and the people who are volunteer, who try to come in, that are from the community, also see. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for being willing to share your experience and taking the questions. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Though I feel like I wish this was kind of longer and hear more of your commentary. Okay, I guess we have a couple more minutes in case anyone has any questions or comments that they want to share.
Los, this is Caitlin. I dropped a few of the programs I know that have slots for folks who are in undergrad without like specialty knowledge to volunteer for. Can you kind of shout out ones that you think folks who are in undergrad would be able to volunteer for?
I would say if people want to volunteer, go to the GED. Gosh, you know, San Quentin is amazing because what is your undergrad? You know, what is it that you're looking for? Because you have media there. You know, you have Ear Hustle, which began there. If you do the arts, you have artistic ensemble there. You have Brothers in Pen there. If you're a writer, you can volunteer your time. If you're in academics in any sense, you can go to Jody Lewin and ask to go in with, we call it PUP. They call it Tamalpais, but we've always known it as PUP from the very beginning, Prison University Project. You get an Associate of Arts, but they have volunteers that come in and teach classes, and they try to make it the most classroom experience that you can. If you are into restorative justice, you know, I would say House of Healing, if you can get into that. I would say like me and a couple other guys, we started Acting with Compassion and Truth, and that's about building empathy. It's a gender and LGBTQIA+ curriculum that made it to where we want to stop violence against people and against women, you know, specifically. So you can always ask to volunteer in that. You know, we need to be able to open that up. San Quentin has just got so many. They got an Inside Prison Project. They have a culinary school there. They have so many different things there. But like I say, San Quentin is exception to the rule. If you really want to make a difference, find out what they did and take it to other prisons. That would be my ask, is like, you know, find out how they did it, talk to them, or talk to us, because we know how they did it, you know, and we're always willing to share our knowledge on how to get more San Quentins per se, and then eventually go
Close. I know a lot of folks that are on the Zoom are close to San Quentin. What's other places are close? Would you think Solano or something? Home to
you have Stockton, you have Solano, you have Vacaville, you have Tracy DVI. Those are all in the vicinity. I would say also, because more people are doing times in the jails around there, Alameda, San Francisco, Contra Costa, you know, all these different county jails. Find a way to get in there and get your time. If you want to, you could always talk to Five Keys. You know, Five Keys has a lot of programs in a lot of different places, and you know, they've actually started to hire the incarcerated because they know that the ex-incarcerated are the ones with the answer on how to get things right. You know, one of my better friends is actually in charge of caretaking for other people in Five Keys, and he's an amazing person, you know, and he's the right person for the job because he wants everybody to succeed. you know,
Mhm.
so I would say, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
start it there.
That that sounds awesome. Here, we have a question in the chat from Sydney, and I
Uh-huh.
think it would be interesting to look at. As a white woman who wants to work with incarcerated individuals, the white woman savior is hard to digest, but also understandable. I will not be able to connect with many individuals on their personal lives, but I sincerely want to help. When you were in prison, did you receive any kind of therapy or counseling? If so, do you think it was beneficial? If not, do you think it could be beneficial?
I would say, um, so yeah, of course I did therapy. I was in the mental health program because I knew that I needed that help, but I couldn't find it there. My biggest therapy was the arts. You know, writing, uh, choreography, directing, you know, talking about trauma in that. I would say that if a person wants to help and they're worried about the white savior complex, part of being a white savior is telling me what I need and not hearing about what I want. I know I am an adult. I know what I want. I know what I need. Give me the space to do that instead of coming in with an idea of how a person is going to save me by showing me something. Know me before that. And then when I ask a need or a want, do that. If I say I need a book, give me the book. Don't get me the book before the book before the book, because that's how I feel like you should stack it up. No, give me what I need. The biggest thing about is yes, I was um, stuck emotionally at certain spots. I would say my biggest thing about being in arrested development is that um, I never got to experience dating per se, going to college, buying a house, having a car. Those are the things that I didn't get to do. But my mind development, as far as my intellect and my emotional awareness, is beyond a lot of other people because if I'm not emotionally aware, riots break out, fights break out. So I actually have to be aware of what I'm feeling and be able to express it in a way that is not violent because I've seen the ugliness of it.
Thank you for that. I think if you're okay with it, I have one more question sent in. But I guess before if anyone needs to go, please follow the link that just got sent in the chat to take a survey just to let us know uh, how your experience was with this presentation. But I think our question is, do you know any um, do you know about any region or religion? I'm not sure what they mean. And I lost it. Goodness gracious.
The question was, if you have a religious background, how could you get involved
Okay.
in volunteering, for example, with chaplain work or other things like that? And whoever sent me that, you can DM me if I'm wrong, and I'll read out what you meant.
Every prison has a chaplain. You get a hold of the chaplain and ask them what they need. Don't tell them what you can do. Always ask. One thing about infiltration is you find out what they need, you become that need, and then you do what you're able to do. Um, for instance, I read and write Greek and Hebrew, and in doing that, my teacher actually came in as a volunteer for the choir, but that's what he knew how to do. But he was willing to sit for a minute and then eventually open up classes. Chaplains are very arrogant and they think that um, they need to watch over us like we're going to get lost somehow. So I would say get a hold of the chaplain, find out what programs they have available there. And every prison has, by law, either a chaplain over whatever a person chooses, their spirituality, their faith, their religion, however a person wants to speak on it. It's fine. And usually there's a Catholic, a Protestant, and a Hebrew or Jewish chaplain and a Native American. But each one of those, if you get a hold of, will find out where you fit. And if you want to go in there and do something, do it.
Thank you for that one. I think we have another comment. My interest is to be a third party or from Sydney, the person who asked the question earlier. I want to be someone that an individual can come and talk to about anything whenever they wish. No questions, no probing, no pushing. I want to be there to help an individual grow and rehabilitate in terms of getting that book for you, etc., etc. And
Then be the third party.
Mhm.
Do it. I mean, it's you got to be, when I hear you say talk about anything they wish, I always think about what prison a person's going to and the trauma that that person's going through at that time, and how a person may go in and expect to see it's a hard place to be some days. And if you're volunteering in New Folsom, you're going to hear some horrible things because people live in horrible conditions. And it's I mean, but if you're going to San Quentin, you're going to hear wonderful things because that is a prison that's up until like COVID hit was actually doing the work. So I would say, choose wisely. And if you're willing to hear anything, there's a lot of guys that need to get that stuff out, and a lot of women, and a lot of folks, queer folks, whomever, they need to get it out. So be that third party.
Yeah, to speak on that, I'm a psychology major, so that's where this whole counseling and therapy thing comes from. And I just think that there could be a lot of healing and a lot of help within being that outlet for people that are in prison that have never been able to or don't feel comfortable enough to express and talk about anything in their lives that's been a struggle. I think that it could help a lot with them just being able to have a person to talk to and kind of throw up on about whatever they wish, without feeling like, I can't say this because X, Y, and Z, or, whatever it may be. And then also, I hope this is why I took this Zoom classes, because I'd love to help people when they are released, come back into society in a positive way. So I think with, like you said, with that book, get me the book, not because I think that you need the book, but because you've asked for it. Just to be a person that can listen and help, I think is something very beneficial.
All right. I would say then make yourself available to whoever's coming out of prison that needs that ear, and understand they ain't got no money. They ain't gonna be able to pay for it. They got to start their life. So if you're willing to sacrifice that, I'd be, man, thank you for that. I appreciate it because we need it.
Well, we appreciate you and everything you've shared with us tonight.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I guess it's time. I greatly appreciate this conversation. I feel like I learned a lot, and I kind of wish that it was much longer. But thank you so much, everyone who came. Thank you so much, Los. Yeah, I guess remember to take our survey and tell us about your experience. We appreciate every single one of you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.